sit on this talk. That question is very simple. What motivated you people to first attend this talk? What was the sense you are getting by seeing this title, Business Model Generation? Anybody? Yeah.
Actually, there are different models for different businesses. So we can study all those models and we can add our native abilities in those models and we can come up with our new model so that business will success.
What I think is scheme of business for for all of the type of businesses are same. The raw thing is the same. Though we have some initial material or the way it is presented, it is different. But the way the scheme, the way it should go, it should progress is a common parameter among all the businesses.
Yeah, today, if you really go into Google and then type this word, like business model generation, you will get something like maybe a lakh, maybe a million answers thrown to you. Because this is a hot topic. It's a hot topic because the world is changing. The whole thing is evolving, world is changing. What you had as a business model quite some time back is no longer working. So there is a requirement to see how do we reinvent our businesses. So this is one of the primary issues in business model. Anyway, before I go into that, I would like another question, and that question is, what you are expecting from this talk? What you think you will gain from this? Yes?
I think I came here just because now what I think is the way we should go practically in outer world, and in a way also as you said that business is evolving, most of the things are changing, and with that every type of business, even nowadays research is what a sort of entrepreneurship. So when we come to this real world, we need to know at least the basics of business models. So just to realize what are the basics of this business model generation.
Yeah, this is a very important point. This point is, in fact, the main idea why I thought that this kind of topic would be really interesting to students, because in a research institute you try to do many things. Many innovations are there, and you are creating a lot of new ideas and then working on those ideas. You really do not know what is the value of this idea. You see, you have an idea, but is it $1 million idea or not is simply not known, because you are not really put to test what is the market for that. So a business model actually is something which takes this idea and then gives an economic model for it. So this is one of the most important reason that anybody who is in a research institution and want to really capture the value from his new idea has to see what is a business model can do for him. There are, of course, as we go along, I will show some of these models, how it had created quite a good amount of value for people. It's another important point I wanted to touch on. Third thing is, of course, we were discussing just before coming here with your president, Mr. Pramod, about actually how one would really start a business. And one of his questions was, where do I start? How do I start? And how really one can as a single person can he, or maybe as a small group, can he make a difference to the world? So here I am going to tell you one small story. It's about two students. Kevin Systrom, he is from Stanford University. Another by name Mike Krieger, he is a co-founder. These two guys decided that they will start a business, and they took a vision, and their vision is to beat Kodak in its game. Very simple. Beat Kodak in its game. Kodak at this point in time, at least when they started at 2008, was a big company. And these two guys from Stanford University, just having graduated from management and engineering sciences, decided they will take on these companies and come one step ahead of Kodak. This company in 18 months' time grew by 13%, from 2% into 13%. And the company sold itself to Facebook at $1 billion. That is the value they got for their idea. And what is their idea? Their idea was simple. It was a very crying need at that point in time. You have mobile phone, you are taking a picture. Most of the time that picture is a grainy picture. I want a picture which is something like taken from an SLR. Second, once I have this picture, I want to share with my buddies. So it should be possible for me to share the picture with my friends. When I want to upload, most of the platforms take a lot of time. I want that to happen fast. So they had only these three simple problems to solve, and their vision was, even on a very grainy picture, it will have to come out as though it is a perfect picture taken out from, say, something like an SLR camera. 18 months time they were able to do it, and the value they got was $1 billion for that. There are quite a few other examples. You can take Angry Birds, again 2003, mobile game, interactive games. Within a short span of something like 7-8 years, 1 billion games have been downloaded. To take Facebook itself, not a very, a company which is having a lot of history, sold for nearly $100 billion. So all these companies, how did they come into and how did they actually prosper and how did they start? If you really see, they all started with very simple vision, very simple problems to solve, but the value they got from the market for their ideas have been stupendous. So it is very important first to start. The rest will follow. But you will ask, anybody who starts, are they going to be successful? I can tell you some recent statistics. 70% of the new businesses started, they fail within the first year. Another 20% within 2 years of start. Only 5% survive 5 years in business. In last February alone, there were about 7,000 bankruptcy cases in US. So what it shows is that it is not really going to be successful because you have started something and you have a committed team, you have a lot of competency, etc. There is something else into the play. And what is that? That something else is largely known as luck. Many a times when you start, there is a need, and what you started was exactly what the market was requiring. So you are successful. So the successful company claims that they have done a thorough checkup of background, and we have committed people, this, that. I can tell you all those things are really not true. Even if you fail, what happens? You look at the other side of the coin. Let us say, what happens if I start, it goes into something, then it fails. You are in the 70% of the case, let us say. What happens? If you have started with VC's money, and you have started, and it had failed, at best what will happen? Your 50% or 60% of the share that you are holding will be liquidated. For that you will be paid money, right? That 60 or 70% of the holding that you had, or even 50% holding you had, the money that you will get will be far more than what you can actually earn through a corporate living. You get into a job at the end of say 30 years, like what I have done, you may get something like maybe how much? $250,000 or $500,000, not more than that. And you may get for your failed venture, for your stake, say something like $1 million. So what actually prevents people from taking this step? You start, you fail. It's bound to happen. Anybody who is seeing a child who starts walking, you'll see that he can never walk correctly in the first step. It just cannot happen. It is unnatural. So if some company clicks on the first shot, it's not true, it just cannot happen. It's purely by chance that it had happened. So I tell each one of you, if you have a vision, if you want to start something, do it. Maximum what you will lose is actually gaining by way of experience, by way of money. So this is my most important message before we go into the real part of how do you actually protect yourself from failing. A business model would try and give you that sense, how to leverage your idea into a successful business. So as I said, my motivation for this is, if you are really having an idea and want to go for a venture capital fund, the first question that he is going to ask you is, what is your business model? The second question he is going to ask you is this business model going to be sustainable? Is it stable? Is it going to be scalable, that I can use this model in other markets? Is it going to make money? And then he is going to ask you that, okay, I am putting this much money, when I am going to get that money back. So basically, these are the concerns of a venture capitalist when you go for next. These are the three concerns that a VC is really bothered about. So going to the third one. My agenda is like this: who needs a business model? We'll just define that. We'll also define what is a business model and how do you generate business models, and what is the role of business model in capturing value. Next. Startups, they are looking for business model. They are generally not in a um, they really don't have a business model. They are anyway a startup, so they have to really find out what business model will be suitable for their kind of idea. Mature firms, when they are actually in a very, they have started with something, it has grown, now they have hit a plateau. So they have, now they need to reinvent their business, so there is a requirement for reinventing their business model. Then you have firms which are like what I have talked about just now, Instagram, which wanted to be somebody like Kodak. So you have a disruptive firm which comes into a market and then wants to capture a large value. So if you see, basically these are the different type of, in the journey of the business, these are the stages at which you look at how do I change my business model. Otherwise, generally, whatever business model you have, they try to carry on business in that model. What Professor C.K. Prahalad used to call it as the dominant business logic. No one wants to disrupt it. If it is going smooth, let us go with that model, let us not change. That would be the general tendency of the firm. Startup business models actually is, as I said, they are looking for business models. So they need to look at what are the different types of business models that exist and then which one would be suitable for their kind of idea. So they try to choose between different business models available, what can be used by them. In fact, startups actually give you a lot of scope because you can have different type of model and then try to see which model actually gives you more leverage. Whereas a business firm which already has some kind of a business model is unlikely to experiment too much with their business models. Next one, please. As I said, the mature firms, they sometimes need to change the business model. They are sometimes required to change the model because they have a new invention, a new technology which comes into the company. Now the company which was using the older technology, with the new technology, now they find, because the new technology is funded with a lot of R&D effort, is going to be more expensive than the older technology. Now, how are you going to sell to your own customers who have been basically used to getting services and product at a price which was quite comparable to the market? Now we'll have to pay more money. So will they agree? How do you convince them? So this is one of the basic theme. In some cases, it so happens, many of the businesses are not really interested in even challenging the customer to accept a new price. A case in example is Nokia. In 1998, they came out with something like what you have now, the iPhone. And Nokia's board decided that if I take it to the market and tell them you have to pay more money for this kind of phone, they are not going to give, so I am not going to implement that idea. Same thing happened with Kodak. Kodak was the first one to come out with a digital camera. And Kodak decided, if I change my business model and ask the customer for more money for his digital camera, because at that point in time, Kodak was giving the film and camera sometimes free of cost to the customer. You take the picture, you give the film to us, we will develop and give you the film. Prints. They were making more money in prints. They were selling photochemicals. They were making more money in photochemicals. So they were not interested in getting into the hardware part of it and giving it to the customers. They were not interested in changing the business model. Kodak has filed for bankruptcy 2012, January. Nokia is undergoing a lot of trouble because they are not interested in changing the business model. The same thing happened to Xerox in 1958 when they come up with a new dry process. At the time, Joe Wilson was Haloid. It was known as Haloid at that point in time. Its revenue was $30 million. And between 1959 to 1978, he took a call on his technology, felt that it can really do wonders for this photocopying market, and he decided he will change the company's business model. At 1978, the revenue was $2.3 billion. Today it is something like $23 billion across the globe. It has presence in 160 countries and employs about 1.4 lakh of people. And because of his bold vision, the company grew at the rate of 41% year on year, what they call as compounded annual growth rate of 41%, which is possibly a record in the entire spectrum of businesses. No one has kept something like 20 years this kind of growth. Of course, at the end of the day, the Competition Commission came into picture and said that you will have to give your technology to others. 15 years is the time at which your patents expire, so you will have to share the patent with others, and they had to give it to some of the Japanese companies, Canon, etc. Otherwise, they had a complete dominancy in the photocopying market for quite a long time. And all because they had the courage to change their business. The growth actually fueled another interesting effort, is that at that point in time when Xerox was making so much money, they were flooded with funds. So they decided their R&D will be separated. It was a Connecticut based company, but they said they will put it in Palo Alto near Stanford University and establish a research center there by name PRC, quite well known in computer science market. They have thrown quite a lot of interesting inventions and innovations. And at that point in time, their chief scientist by name John Seeley Brown, he was the director of the PRC from 1972 onwards. And he had these three questions, which he felt is very, very important. That how do we create value proposition for our research output? Because that model 914 of Xerox actually came out of research and totally changed the face of the company. So they felt that we have got other research output coming out from the company. How do we make a value proposition which can really give benefits to the company? So that was his first question. The second one is, what is the right business model that would fit with the technical and market opportunities? And the third question is, what is the role of this cognitive bias? Hope you're familiar with the word cognitive bias. Basically, in a very layman's term, we can say that it is what is known as your mental outlook to things. Gain, you have certain experience gained over a period of time. So you say something will work, something will not work. You say it's my gut feeling is that it doesn't work. So where did you get that gut feeling? It's basically what is an accumulated bias. These bias could be sometimes good, sometimes bad. So he was really interested in knowing these answers to these three questions, and at that point in time there was a young gentleman in Stanford University who had just completed his MBA, and then he had taken in Xerox to answer these questions, and his relation with Xerox continued for more than 20 years. So his name is Henry Chesborough. He is now a professor of management in Has Business School in University of California. He went through certain amount of internship with Harvard Business School. He was assistant professor there, worked with Clay Christensen, and he came out with a book on business model, open business model. And his idea was that any research output, whether it is done inside the company or outside the company, is a source of revenue for any company. So if you have a research community, all the ideas can be harvested for creating value. And that was the theme of the open business model. It must be available in your students' library. I recommend you can go through this. It's a fantastic book. And in fact, whatever I am talking about Xerox is already written by him in this small paper which I have quoted in the previous slide. It's available. This is also you can freely download from internet. Most of the things that I am talking about has come from this research paper. Next one, please. This is about the third kind of firms, which are disruptive firms. A lot of work has been done by Clay Christensen of again Harvard Business School. He was the mentor for, anybody know? Mentor for Intel. If he was not there, Intel possibly would not have been born, because at that point in time when Andy Grove wanted to start from a small memory firm, and when they came out with the first microprocessor 8088, and they had taken Clay Christensen, and they were quite anxious because at that time IBM was the one who was dominating the market. HP was the other one, Texas Instrument was others. So they felt that when there are so many giants, how do we succeed in this market? Even though I have a product, I don't know. Can we? Again, luck played a great part, because IBM decided that they will not be able to do the software for this. It's too small a thing to touch. And fortunately for Bill Gates, his mother was one of the brokerage houses which was covering IBM, and she said that my son is quite interested in doing something for you. Would you allow him to do something? She said, they said, yes, why not? And they gave them DOS free. And you know the history now. Microsoft is challenging IBM. So basically his theory is on how an innovator comes up and then challenges big firms is almost a path-breaking research. Innovator's dilemma is followed it up with another one on innovator's solution. go to the next one. So this is the background. Let us say what are the three forms that one requires and looks at business model we have seen. So what is this business model? We have talked about business model, but we have not really come to that point. How do we define a business model? As I said, if you keep the Google, you will get nearly 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh answers for that. So what we know is that if everyone speaks in different language, we are going to get a Tower of Babel. We need to have a modern business requires a clear, concise definition of a business model. So that is the first requirement. The second one is, how do we communicate my business model? I have a model. So when the VC asks, how do I communicate to you? This is my model. So that's another requirement, because we have a multicultural society. When you are going to a VC may be from different place. He has seen businesses in different context. So how are you going to communicate your business model to him and convince him that yours is going to work? One is defining, another is convincing others, but the real test is actually making the cake and eating it. So basically, how are you going to implement this? You have got this thing, you have defined, you have shown, is it sufficient? Is it implementable in the first place? So these are all the third issue that comes into picture. And we know that with the existing terminologies and these things, go to the next one, with obsolete and outdated way of just defining it in verbose prose, it's not going to happen. People are going to get confused. So obsolete methods are not going to work. So we do not take that method of defining or communicating or implementing our business model. More than that, this business model will have to work and it will have to make money. So that is also another important criteria. Once I have the business model, how do I link it to a mechanism in which I can see how much money I can make? Is it possible? So your business model actually requires all these things to be done. Next. And even if you have something which is working, as I said, a new business, you need to change it. Because if it is not working, you need to refine it. So changing and innovating model also is to be built in the model itself. Otherwise, it is going to be totally difficult for you to start again right from the scratch. So the whole way of inventing, making the business model is like reinventing the wheel. It's a book by Alexander Osterwalder and Luis Prego. These two guys are from University of Lausanne in Switzerland. This book was published in 2006 or 7, and it basically gives you a framework of how do you really generate a business model, how to differentiate your business, how to make value propositions, and how to create value for your enterprise. Uses almost a step-by-step. Next. Step-by-step procedure for doing this. So what is a business model framework? The definition is as given here. A model describes a value an organization offers to customers. It shows the capabilities and partners required in making the business model workable, and the goal of this is to generate profit and sustainable revenue streams. Next. Click. So first you will have to define what is a value proposition, then you define what is your customer segments. Next. How are you going to distribute your offer to the customers? What is a distribution channel? Next. How do you maintain relationship with your customers? Next. This actually shows the kind of, if you do this part, it shows what is possible from your idea. What is the revenue stream you can get from your idea. Next. You have the core capabilities. So what are the capabilities that you have? Your idea and how you are actualizing it. What are the activities that are required to offer this value proposition from your capabilities that you list down. Next. It will show you what are the partners you require for doing this effectively, and you can find out what is the cost that is going to be there in doing this. So this is the revenue stream part and this is the cost part. And when you see the revenue is greater than the cost and the value that you offer to the client is more than the price, then you are having a real good sale. It's something like Apple selling you an iPhone at something like $400. People believe it's a great product. You will not get it for $400. It should have been priced at 1,000, but he is giving me at 400. So I will go and grab it. People stand in queue to get the product. So that is how you will actually make the offer. Your offer should be at least a couple of times multiples more than the price that you offer. If you are offering a product at 10 rupees, the customer should value it at least at 20 rupees. Then only you are going to have a great sale. Otherwise you will have a sale but not going to be great. Next. I will give you one example. This example is basically taken out from my last assignment in the office. We had a travels and tours division, and this division was basically concentrating more on the tourism and travel part, that is ticketing part. So the ticketing sale was plateauing because the ticket now, previously we used to distribute, people can come and book the ticket, etc. But later on when the internet came, people went into internet because we are mostly into air travel. So basically anybody can buy a ticket through the internet. So there was no question of somebody coming and buying a ticket from you. So we were under terrible pressure. That was one. Second thing is because of the fuel price increase and all that, the prices of the ticket itself had gone up. So again, there was a speech from the airlines. It said that even if you are selling a paper ticket, we are not going to give you any margin. Okay? So that was another challenge. So the company, even though was present in a tourism sector in a very, very limited way, wanted to see whether we can expand in the tourism side, where there is a lot of value addition was possible. So we have taken a small assignment. We have taken some 3 students from IIT Kharagpur to study this and come out with a solution. What are the different opportunities and what kind of effort can be done there. I have a small decided we will apply whatever has been shown here as a listening to these students went across to do this study and then came out with quite a good amount of suggestions, which made us to look at our business model. Go next one. We had the organization, we had technology, and our strategy, as I said, was to move away from ticketing into tourism. And as I said, business model here is basically a management construct which uses these two inputs, technological innovation and organization as inputs, and converts them strategically aligning with the customers and market so that it becomes an economic output. So basically this is what was required at that point in time, to look into all the three aspects of the business and then come out with the business model. And these are all forces which are basically economic and other forces which are acting on like leisure tourism, wellness tourism. We have seen that these are all the different sectors which are available for putting up a business. And as I said, the internet, mobile and multiple platform delivery models, they are putting a lot of pressure on our margin in the ticketing side. And social environment also has been changing, like people were traveling more, increasing their disposable income, etc. All these things is showing a lot of requirement for the customer is interested in spending money. And the competition is also quite fragmented in India. A lot of other tour operators were giving fragmented services. So there was a large tourism companies from abroad were interested in capturing Indian market, and they were also moving into. I don't know, maybe seeing some television advertisement even now, Expedia.com, which has come into Indian market for offering tourism services. It's again a US multinational company. So basically all these things were in our mind and was studied in detail. Next. And we have evaluated how do we put all these things into picture, what is the value proposition need to be, what are the key activities that we will do, what are the key resources required for doing this, what is going to be the partner network, and what are the customer segments that we will address. So this is a single page business model which tells what are the value proposition that we will offer. That would be basically offering on leisure, wellness, rural and adventure tourism. It has to be a 360 event, like inbound, outbound, domestic, boarding, lodging, shopping. All these things will have to be taken care of by the tourism operator. You can have exclusive tie-ups with the businesses which are wanting to come to India. Like a lot of Americans would like to come to India and explore. But right now there is not a single point of contact in which he can do that. He has to come to India and then explore. How do I go about going in different places? So as a single point promotion, is it possible? Special group tours like ladies only, students only, seniors only, etc. Which could be for people going from India to abroad or from abroad to India. So these are all the propositions that are possible. For doing that, what kind of distribution network we have? We already have a lot of point of sale network. We already had e-commerce, e-commerce network. We were required to put up some of those things. Website plus online TV for promoting the websites. Again through internet, mobile phone. GDS is global delivery systems, which are basically approved IATA approved agencies, which has a, like you have this computerized reservation system. A global service network connects all the airlines across the globe. It's an IATA setup, and the GDS operators, either it could be Amadeus or Galileo, a few operators who tell you that on a particular day which aircraft goes from which place to which, and then what is the seat availability, gives you the entire reservation picture, what is the price, etc. So those kind of operators, you need to have tie-up with those people. And your target groups are, of course, could be individual groups and corporate, etc. So this is basically the revenue side. For doing all these things, you need to have a lot of initiatives taken. Similarly, you can see what is the partners, what are your core capabilities, and how it translates into the activity configuration, and how the revenue model and cost structure. Most of these things can be straight away taken from here and then put into a Excel sheet so that you can simply get into the scenarios. Next, please. So this basically shows the value creates revenue. Next. And the value proposition is infrastructure is required to create value. These are all the value that is getting created. So what is the infrastructure? Next. And the infrastructure generates cost. So these are all the elements of cost. Next. And this is your revenue should be more than the cost when you are in a profit zone. So all these things can be very directly taken in an Excel sheet and you can generate different scenarios. Next. So how do you generate a business model? There are a number of ways. Next. You can use a business model canvas. This is a business model canvas. So this is again available in one of the websites, business model website. You can download this. It basically gives you a simple single page A3, and you can use a post-it note to put at different places what are the things that you would like to do. For doing that, you need a diverse team, so people will have to know exactly. There are number of questions available in that business model canvas. It gives you the model itself. You will get a lot of questions. You try to answer them. So you will be in a position to basically make at least a draft model which you can look at instead of trying to make something from your own construct. This takes you on a guided tour kind of. Three ways. One is a napkin sketch, which basically looks at the revenue side, elaborate canvas, business case, and field test. And basically your business should be something like a story. So people can really connect to that. You can use visual thinking methods. As I said, you can visualize it with the post-it notes. And when you give it, you can get the feedback from people and then modify your business. Next. This is a canvas. Next. So as I said, it's basically draws a sample business model canvas. This is the idea and the key elements only. This will be a more elaborate canvas. Explore all the elements to look at the business logic, market potential, and fact finding. The business case will actually collect more key data and cost versus revenue, estimated profit loss, and a field test would actually reiterate your business logic. So if you follow these 4 steps, your business model will be more or less complete. And some of the entrepreneurial course in say like Stanford University, they take you through all these 4 steps so that the class actually gets a real experience of looking at a business. In one of those tests, if you are each of them are given only $5 and asked to generate how much you can generate in 4 weeks time. The business idea which you wanted was able to generate $5,000. So money is not the issue. Many times we get a feeling that if you don't have money, you cannot start. Not true. Next. So this is how one would do a business model. Let us see then next, this is the last part of the talk, which is saying about the role of business model in capturing wealth. Next please. Again, I have given that same reference, you can go through that. How did Xerox in 1959 generated a new business model which gave 41% year on year. At that time, most of the people were not doing more than 100 copies in a month. The normal photocopying that people were doing with the wet process, for whole month it was only 100. At that time, he went and told them, he will give the machine at $95 per month, and their man will be sitting in the office and he will take all the photocopy, count, based on that if it goes about 2000 copies, you've got to pay 4 cents per copy. The cost of the 914 was $2,000.